After a career that took her from 60 Minutes to Good Morning America to the ABC anchor desk, Diane Sawyer is stepping down. And she's so important to ABC News that her job is being split into 3 parts. David Muir will take over world news, George Stephanopoulos will be chief anchor for breaking news and political coverage, and Sawyer herself will handle major newsmaker interviews, as she explained on the air.
At the end of the summer, I'm going to be moving to a new role at the network. David Muir is going to be anchor, managing editor, sitting right here at this desk. David.
Diane, you know what a humbling day this is for me.
Time for the Z Block. I spoke earlier with Baltimore Sun TV critic David Zerwick in Baltimore. And here in the studio, longtime ABC correspondent Lynn Sher, author of the new book, Sally Ride, The First Woman in Space. Lynn, David, welcome.
Great to be here with you, Howard.
Sher, we've just gone from, seemingly overnight, from 2 female network anchors, Diane, Katie Couric, to 3 white men again. Is that a problem?
I don't think it is. I think that what's happened in the 2 generations since those of us who were kicking in a lot of doors got there back in the 70s is that women have become trusted, accepted. They're serious reporters.
Nothing left to prove?
I won't say there's nothing left to prove. I will say that it's taken that long, but we've really gone from being seen as belonging in the kitchen and the bedroom to being in the boardrooms and the anchor booth. So, no, it's not over, but this part of it is over. This phase of it is definitely over.
David, Diane Sawyer obviously is going to continue to do big interviews at ABC News, but given her celebrity star power and her award-winning career, is this a loss, a setback for the network?
You know, I don't know, Howie. I think it totally depends on what Diane Sawyer and ABC choose to do with this. If they just make it a kind of emeritus position, it will be a setback. But I think that Diane Sawyer is one of the smartest people in TV news. And I think, you know, the way it was kind of described when you cut through all the PR stuff, it sounded like they wanted her to think big thoughts and come up with big ideas and new ways to get at stories. I think she could be really terrific at that, and she could give ABC a kind of intellectual ballast that neither of the networks can come close to touching. So I think it could be great.
Right.
Look, based on her career, she's not going to sit there and do nothing.
Let's talk about that career for a second. There are a lot of good TV interviewers out there.
Right.
What qualities does Diane Sawyer have that makes people ranging from, I don't know, Michael Jackson to Hillary Clinton comfortable enough to sometimes commit candor?
Well, I think what David said is most important is that she's smart. It's important also to listen in an interview, and Diane,
don't know that.
Right? It's the #1 quality, and Diane does that. What she's done is what so many other first females have done, which is not to mess up, not to do it wrong. You know, Sally Ride, when she was about to fly, become the first American woman in space, said she felt under pressure not to mess up. And she knew that if she did, no other woman could be an astronaut because it reflects on other women. Diane, Katie, Barbara, all of us who were there at some level of firstness said, we've got to do it well for the next group that comes along. And that's what Diane has done.
And Z, what about the strange way that ABC is carving up her job? I mean, as we just noted, she'll continue to be a presence of the network, but you have David Muir, solid citizen, solid journalist, becoming the evening news anchor, but George Stephanopoulos staying at GMA, becoming chief news anchor, which means, you know, disasters, breaking news, political conventions, election night. It'll be Stephanopoulos and not the technical lead anchor, David Muir.
Yeah, I think there's two ways to read that. When I wrote about it, I said, I don't know if that says more about Muir or about Stephanopoulos or about what ABC thinks of him. Here's what I think. I mean, in one sense, in one real sense, they're not sure yet what Muir's going to do in a big story. You know, think back to the Boston bombing when they found the second brother in that boat where he was finally arrested. Remember the brilliant interview that Diane Sawyer did with the next door neighbor on the very old tech telephone? It was a brilliant interview.
Can you imagine if Dan Rather had been told by the CBS brass, Dan, you can sit here and read the news at 6:30, but we're going to have, I don't know, Bob Schieffer go off whenever there's a breaking story.
It's a different paradigm. It's a different model today. Kids whose eyeballs they want are not watching the evening news. And they've got to figure out a way to parse all of this so that they get the next generation. And this is clearly an attempt to start changing that model.
So Lynn,
go
ahead, Z.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Z.
No, not to totally disagree with that, Lynn, but I think there is an element of what Howie's suggesting here of the shrinking of the network evening news anchor. This is not the stature of the generation of your generation of anchors and network news people. And it isn't just audience erosion. I think it's the way the networks themselves have compromised their news divisions and the way they've ceded territory, particularly in political coverage, to cable channels and other platforms.
Well, I happen to believe that the evening newscasts, even though people ridicule them as being dinosaurs, are still an important franchise with a lot of eyeballs. But what this says to me, because clearly this is sort of a way of making George Stephanopoulos the top dog there without giving him the evening news chair, is that the morning is more important, that the 2-hour Good Morning America will continue to be a player, which is now #1 in the ratings.
It's more important in terms of money. It is not necessarily more important in terms of how people get their news. And that's clearly a financial decision that's being made. This is what the networks are all dealing with right now. In terms of getting the news, I think by giving Diane the ability to go out and do big, long think pieces, and by giving George the liveness and getting to do all these breaking stories, that to me is the big deal.
Right. The financial considerations.
And yes, that's the other half of the story, is that they had to take care of George. I mean, he's making money for him, and this title, in many ways, he totally deserves it. He is the big gun, so I think there's two things. One, they're not so sure about Muir yet. They're not going to pitch him at the top of the rotation yet. And second, they had to take care of George. I think it's from a management point of view, it's not a bad strategy. They have a backup here.
All right, we'll get to see when we tune in, and both in the morning and the evening. David Zurich, Lynn Scher, thanks very much for joining us.